All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick in sunny surrounds. Today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the Women's World Cup. We're going to have an early look at some NBA awards markets, talk about the US Hard Court circuit getting kicked off as well. But first, Drew, how was your weekend?
It was a great weekend, Jay. We are here in the dog days of summer. It was nice not to have anything super, no super sweats. I bet Tom Kim to win the British Open, and he got second. I bet him to win, so I got $0. and ultimately, it wasn't that close because the margin of victory remains impossibly high at that course for some reason. Brian Harman really, he stole the show. I think realistically, you could probably put a bow on the Open when he hit the eagle at the end of round 2 on 18, because at that point he just needed to play par golf and get it home. It's still a fun tournament, and it's a nice kind of way to put a bow on golf for the summer, at least for those of us who only care about the majors.
Yeah, Brian Harman. I think he was 175 to 1 to win the tournament, and then after the start of day 2, just kind of ran away with it. It's an interesting one where his price in the market, particularly on day 3, I think it was just completely departed from data golf, which is usually pretty lined up with outright prices. But this was just a complete disparity where data golf was significantly higher on Harman than the market, having him at 50% when the market was saying he was more like 30%. And so, look, these golf outright major championship markets are pretty liquid and pretty reliable, and there's a lot of money. I think at the time there was 11 million matched on Betfair, so there's a lot of other models out there too. But I thought that was interesting that maybe that was lining up with the public's expectation that he was just going to blow it at some point because he hadn't been there before. But just coasted, and I guess pressure doesn't set in if you're playing with a 6-shot lead for the better part of 2 days.
Every time things got a little tight and you saw the margin creep to like 3, and they were wondering if there was a moment in the back of his head where he was just gonna gack one off the tee box, but it never happened. He answered every time it got tough. I will say that on Saturday, I think I noticed that too, and I think the big departure was just everybody was playing minus golf and you really, really needed something to go wrong for him to let anyone else back into that tournament. It couldn't just be, somebody going nuclear low. He had to come back to the pack in some way, and the conditions were just too easy. He wasn't really incentivized to take risks. It was just get it on the green, do your lag putt. Like it was pretty clinical and straightforward for him to get that one home. And hats off to everybody who saw that one coming. I have a specific in a couple of times now in the high stakes Calcutta. I've ended up with Harman because my numbers have been higher on him than the market. And he's won me $0. So to see him get this home at those prices was definitely a little annoying, but it's golf is like that. It kind of has that whiff to it.
Yeah, and I guess, it's never going to be foreseeable that Brian Harman is going to win a major at 175 to 1. But I think that, when you marry up the course to the player's strengths, it does make sense now in retrospect, because Harman's thing is that he doesn't have a lot of distance off the tee. But if no one's really hitting driver anyway and he doesn't really need the distance, then all of his other strengths came to the fore. Strengths came to the fore as well for your man, Jonas Vingegaard. I think we decided to go with. Wins his second straight yellow jersey. What did you make of the tour?
Awesome. It was an awesome tour, not just because of the outcome. Loved getting that one home. That was a ton of fun. Last couple tours have been tough to really find value in. So finding a winner on the Tour de France was awesome. This time last week, we were talking about the time trial being sort of the key stage, and, some of the, kind of the team Jumbo-Visma telegraphing a little bit that they thought their guy had a huge ride. Well, the time trial was spectacular by Vingegaard. That was probably the single most impressive ride that I can remember going back 3-4 years. And to put that much time on a guy who's an outstanding time trialer in Pogačar, and then even then backing it up the next day and putting another, dropping him again and putting another 5 minutes, it was really quite an impressive third week for both Vingegaard as well as Team Jumbo-Visma. Great tour overall. Absolutely beautiful stages. I really liked the layout of this year's Tour de France, and from the standpoint of making good television and having just something awesome to watch every morning in the beautiful countryside of France and the Alpine, some of the Alpine setting at the end of the tour. It was quite awesome. So that'll be a very memorable Tour de France, and it'll be fascinating to see if the UAE team that Pogačar rides for can put together a little bit more, less top heavy. They had second and third best riders in this year's tour, but really not enough domestiques to kind of take some of the load off those guys in the middle of the race when they needed to. And also, Pogačar is probably going to come into next year's tour a little underrated because this is now 2 in a row for Vingegaard. Meanwhile, Pogačar didn't really get a ton of warm-up riding in, because of the broken wrist. He missed a couple of key kind of specific ones that really tune you up for this 3-week race. And so there is a realistic expectation that next year, you're not going to see this as a pick-em when things start, and that there's going to be value on Pogačar as they put together a little bit more competitive team, and potentially you get a nice price on Pogačar to stop the three-peat.
Indeed. Yeah. And I will say that the tour, if you are into it, I mean, obviously one of the most picturesque sporting events, also just the timing of it is unlike anything else. It's kind of, for me, I guess, as an Australian, the closest parallel to watching like test match cricket. Congratulations to England for not winning the Ashes. I'm going to miss you as well, Drew, saying Jumbo-Visma and Vingegaard and so forth. But alas, we must move on to the World Aquatics Championships, which we talked about a little bit last week. Ariarne Titmus breaks the world record in the 400-meter free. We've got the final day coming up on Sunday, my birthday, actually, July 30. Maybe I'll spend it in front of Peacock watching the World Swimming Championships. Have you got anything on tap in terms of bets for this at the moment?
Yeah, it's been extremely tough to find anyone who is willing to take many meaningful bets. So I'm kind of enjoying this more as a fan, which is kind of a nice throwback experience for me because I view sports so singularly through the lens of betting nowadays that it's interesting to view it as a fan. But you mentioned it off the top. Titmus has stolen the show. Team Australia is swimming extremely well. Titmus, and especially she had a rough start to the season. A handful of performances that were kind of uncharacteristically didn't really feel like she was as sharp as she wanted to be at that time. But whatever happened in the late training cycle for her, she has exploded. Her world record swim, the 400 freestyle, it looked easy. Honestly, I don't even really know what her limit is beyond what we saw from her. It was an extremely impressive swim. And it has me watered up for the 800 free, where Ledecky is a huge favorite. And if Titmus's training cycle is peaking this well, she's going to be a handful for Ledecky to handle in the 800. Ledecky's going to swim and win the mile pretty comfortably today. I think, or really, the next final session, I think, includes the women's 1500 free. Ledecky probably wins that by 15-20 seconds, but the 800 is going to be super close, and very, very excited. Titmus, I think, is your easy call bet to win the 200 freestyle as well. So if she can also challenge in the 800, she might be up for a pretty spectacular meet overall. The Pacific Rim countries on the on the western side of the Pacific have all really popped. China did not expect a handful of their athletes to be really knocking on the door of medals, but they're winning specific events outright with times that are really impressing. So China's having a tremendous meet. The Team USA, I thought that 2021 in Tokyo was a little bit uncharacteristic from our swimmers, and specifically I thought that maybe we suffered more from the pandemic rules and regulations than maybe some of the other athletic groups did, and we were going to have a bounce back in Paris. This is not portending well for Team USA swimming so far. We have one gold medal, and it was by default because the best swimmer in the race got DQ'd somewhat uncharacteristically in the women's 200 IM. So it is very real. We were staring at a real likelihood where we could be shut out of gold to this point through two final sessions, which is wild. It doesn't really look like the cavalry is coming anytime soon because we have really impressive athletes ahead of some of our best swimmers in this meet, particularly in the 200 back for the women. The sprinters, Australia has got us beat there. And, our relays are going to be, we're struggling to pick up bronze medals, let alone win gold in some of these relays. So Team USA has a lot of work to do to get ready for Paris.
Yeah, tough to see Team USA struggling. I will say that if you are inclined, just getting into swimming and other, Olympic kind of sports heading up to the Olympics is a pretty good idea because those markets are extremely vulnerable and they don't take a lot of work to find edges. I remember the last Olympics, there was so many minus 140 shots that should have been minus 3,000. And just they're very difficult markets to price, and there's not generally a ton of liquidity, which just creates a lot of angles or rorts.
One other swimming note: we had to say goodbye. It's been a fast meet. There's been some world records, and we say goodbye to the last standing Michael Phelps world record went down. In spectacular fashion. French swimmer just absolutely obliterated his 400 IM time. One of those, if you see, if and when the Olympic gold medal market goes up for the men's 400 IM, it's on day one. This Frenchman who just set the world record is going to win it by a body length, maybe more. So he should be in the minus 3,000 range, kind of like you're alluding to.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, speaking of freaks, it's a star-studded battle this Sunday on MLB leadoff as Shohei Ohtani, baseball's Michael Phelps, and the Angels travel north of the border to face Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And the Blue Jays find out if there will be fireworks at Rogers Center at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. That's a good one. A couple of teams in the American wild card race. All right, let's talk about the Women's World Cup. Start off with USA Netherlands. USA minus 140 on the win-draw-win. The Netherlands plus 380. The draw is plus 250. On this especially clinical win from the US in the first match against Vietnam, where they were minus 20,000 favorites, and it was only 2-0 with about 15 minutes to go. Never really in doubt. The money line got turned off after the first goal pretty much everywhere. But Vietnam put up more of a fight than you'd expect. I think in general with the World Cup, a lot of upsets and a really strong performance from the underdogs, which probably vindicates the expansion of the tournament, thinking particularly of France failing to win against Jamaica as, I think, minus 2,000 favorites. England really struggled against Haiti as well. That could have gone the other way. Australia didn't look too good. We'll talk a bit more about them. But what do you made of the tournament so far, and what do you think of the US team?
Yeah, we'll save some thoughts for the U.S. for a moment while we just kind of note that the major betting news around the Women's World Cup is that unders are crushing. I think if you were blind backing under to this point in the tournament, you are probably ahead 10 units, which is crazy. This was not, there's not really any obvious reason that I can tell you that there was some sort of fundamental mispricing of these totals in these games, but many of these unders are coming in and it's not even really a close call. For whatever reason, some of the teams maybe had issues with travel and acclimating to the times that they were supposed to be competing there, because there's been it hasn't just been Team USA. All of the European teams outside of Spain have lacked that kind of crispness. I would expect that as they continue to acclimate to time and as they, the international, the kind of reconstitution of club to nationality, that takes a little bit of time to build some chemistry. And so realistically, if the second leg of the round robin stage is more unders, my gut says you could probably blind bet the overs in the third round robins and probably have a decent angle as the market is overcorrecting for this. Right now, I think you've seen enough shift in price for these round two games that it should probably split 50-50. But in the case that there is still a little bit of a lack of, chemistry and goal scoring, then if unders continue to come in, then I'm going to be ready to try to capture the other direction of this side. Team USA, it can't win, apparently, in the court of public opinion. They, of course, very famously just used their first group stage match against Thailand in 2019 as an opportunity to get everybody an opportunity to get onto the goal sheet. And they took a lot of criticism for that because it really didn't feel like a fair fight. It wasn't, people didn't enjoy watching it, even though it was, clinical at times from Team USA. And I thought that set them up very well for, kind of everybody kind of knew their roles and responsibilities. They already got a goal out of the way, so the pressure was off a little bit. And this time, rather than taking that approach, they played a very conservative game against Vietnam to start. People expected this to be a blowout, and it wasn't ever really in doubt. And I think it's fair to come out of this and say they didn't look sharp. But guess what, Jay? I don't know if you remember in December, but a little team called Argentina lost their first group stage match to Saudi Arabia and then went on to win a World Cup and get Messi a golden ball, most famously. Golden ball. Yeah. So it's not how you start these tournaments, it's how you finish. And the questions do exist, though, of who is our ultimate, goal scoring machine on this team, because to a degree, there's a transition of power from the existing players to the young next generation. And I think you're catching a little bit of value here on USA against Netherlands. I don't think the Netherlands are the same team that made it to the World Cup final in 2019 or really even close. They have decent defense, decent goaltending, but they're definitely going to be vulnerable to the counterattack. USA's women's midfield is good enough that they should be able to dominate possession in this game in general. And then when the Netherlands get a chance and get stoned, then I think USA is going to be pretty brilliant on the counter. I have USA coming through here 2-0. I don't mind laying 1.5 goals for the current price. I don't mind laying -140 for them on the three-way. And I think, they build a little bit of momentum into the group stages here. Really, the only thing that's scaring me at all, and looking down on the horizon, is the Spanish team is playing exceptionally well. They look like they have perfect chemistry already, which is surprising considering, as we were talking last week in the preview, they don't love their coach. They mutinied against him, and he's still in the building. So that's sort of the only major takeaway I think you can have from the round one stages, is that just everybody looks a little bit out of sorts.
Yeah, I will say to your point about Argentina, I think that's been kind of a recurring theme at World Cups, is that teams don't necessarily play well in the early stages before going on to win. Teams can really grow into the tournaments. Argentina, as we said, the result against Saudi Arabia. I think Spain in 2010 might have lost to Switzerland 1-0 in their first game. In 2014, Germany went to extra time against Algeria in the round of 16 before going on to destroy the field and win there. So, I wouldn't necessarily read too much into struggles. To your point about unders, I think under 2.5 in USA Vietnam was 40-1, and the over didn't come in there until 10-15 minutes left in the match. And as someone who has done the 24-hour across the world flight to Australia, coming off that flight, I didn't really feel ready to put 6 goals past the Vietnamese either. But presumably they are acclimated, and maybe they will grow more into the tournament as it progresses. So before we close off on this, just odds to win the World Cup. USA, their odds are the same as pre-tournament, as you would probably expect, given that they did what they were expected to do, more or less, against Vietnam. They're +225. Your Spaniards are +350, second favourite, in from +550 pre-tournament. England +500. They've drifted a little bit after a pretty unimpressive performance, first up against Haiti, and then Australia, they're the problematic one. They won their first match, but they didn't look great in doing so. And the big news there is that Sam Kerr, who is the best striker in the world, we're probably not going to see her. A teammate let slip to the press that Sam Kerr had torn her calf. And then the Australian PR team was like, no, she doesn't actually have a torn calf. She just misspoke. That's a pretty strange thing to misspeak about. You just typically don't invent a torn calf. And so if she's done, then that probably doesn't spell the end for the Matildas, but pretty close when you're missing your best player and the hub of your attack and everything. And, maybe they could still do it, but certainly they should drift. And their odds are actually shortened since pre-tournament. So no interest for me, unfortunately, on Australia. But any bets in this market that you like at the moment?
So the conceit of taking Team USA at the outright stages, because the balance of the draw was going to be a little bit imbalanced, is changing a bit. Surprise, surprise. England not as dynamic, certainly, and France. Maybe that doesn't even end up down there. It's tough to see that they don't ultimately win that group, but maybe they don't. And the best challenger we've seen on the field to this point has been Spain, who's going to be in the top half with Team USA. The team that we have not mentioned, who is in the mix there at the top of the board, is Germany, and they have sort of the exact right, kind of generation coming together, proving together through the club system, and now kind of, very familiar with each other, lots of team chemistry, that I think Germany probably makes this final. Team USA is going to have to get it done by beating Spain in, I believe, the semis, and then Germany in the final. If I had to predict it, I think they can still do it. But it's going to be, that 1-2 punch is going to be a very, very tough test in the semifinals and finals if Team USA doesn't ultimately find a higher gear. So, I don't hate the idea of taking a Germany, just in the case that Spain USA turns into like a real difficult bloodbath type of a semifinal, at which point maybe Germany has the easier path to the final and a little bit less bullets fired once they get there, because Germany and Spain is a pretty close match by my numbers. I would make Germany a small favorite in that match. I think the market is going to make Spain a small favorite, but either way, I think the Germans are the only side that really kind of interests me at the current prices. What are your thoughts?
Yep, no, I think that makes sense. Brazil is the other big mover as well. They're from 22-1 into 12-1. So if you can catch perhaps a stale price on that, that might be a look. I will say that this is a phenomenal tournament for parents of very young children. My 1-year-old woke up at 2:17 a.m. the other night, and I just flicked on Women's World Cup when I couldn't get back to bed, parlayed straight into watching some Collingwood Port Adelaide. So yeah, great sport, great competition to watch in the middle of the night. And we'll continue to check in on the Women's World Cup. All right, before we get to some NBA and tennis, with the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your RotoWorld Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and more. Go to nbcsports.com/draft guide and use code DRAFT2023 to save 20% at checkout. All right. Never too early to talk some NBA awards, which will be settled about 10 months from now or so. MVP market, which you would think would be the most reliably priced because it's got the most attention on it. But year after year, books just keep on putting up Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic at double figures early in the season. That has corrected a little bit for this year. But taking a look at the odds now, Nikola Jokic is plus 400, and the rightful favorite, Luka Doncic, just like he is every year, is plus 500. Giannis plus 550, Joel Embiid plus 600. Jason Tatum, 9-1. Durant, Curry, Booker, Shea follow. My thought on this market is that Jokic is just way too long. I don't think there's any world where Nikola Jokic more like 30%. I think this 65 games rule helps him because, touch wood, he never gets hurt. Whereas Joel Embiid has got to be like coin flip, I think, to qualify. Maybe at best. Giannis deals with a lot of injuries as well lately. Durant's a weird one injury-wise because they seem to be just random, isolated kind of contact injuries. He doesn't have like a chronic one thing like Giannis's knee or Embiid's knees. But I think Jokic has been the most deserving candidate 3 years in a row. He didn't win last year because people didn't want to give him the 3 in a row without him ever having made the finals. Well, now he's a made man. And now I think if it's close, he would actually get the bump, whereas a complete stark opposition to last season, because I think people probably feel bad about what happens. And it's not like Embiid was an undeserving winner or anything, but I think that if you had the exact same season play out again, everyone had the same stats at the end of this coming season, then Jokic would win. So I think he should be a heavier favorite, but what do you think of this market?
Yeah, no, I think you broke it down well. He should be a clear tier on his, in and of himself from a price standpoint. I don't think that there's really a 3 or 4 way mix between these guys at the top. I think it's Jokic, and then everyone else. The points you made, I think, are all relevant. The only thing I can add is that the West is still a lot weaker than the East in terms of getting the 1 seed. And you can maybe talk yourself into, well, if the Nuggets are a 3 or a 4 seed or something like that, maybe somebody dings him for for not getting the 1 seed this year. But I got to think their path to the 1 seed is pretty clean. Denver is a good regular season team anyway because they have the altitude going for them, they have the travel advantage going for them in so many regular season contests that they're basically banked to like 15 wins before we even see the schedule. And anything else beyond that. It's pretty easy to see that people are very willing to give Jokic's MVP flowers again this year after what we saw with them in the playoffs last year. So, 4-1 is probably one of there are very few bets that you can make right now getting a price of 4-1 where I think you're getting just an absolute steal of a price, but that's one of them.
Yeah, I will say I think this is something in all awards markets where every year Jokic is too long, Mahomes is too long, Connor McDavid is too long, Shohei Ohtani is too long, and so I think the books are just kind of conservative, and people don't want to tie up their money for that long. And there's a feeling of like, well, how can he be this short? Well, he should be this short because he's the most deserving candidate every year, and he's still in his prime, and he's got this added bump now with the games played thing, which I think just has to help him. In terms of any long shots in this market, I mean, it's not typically an award where, someone comes out of nowhere to win MVP. It does happen. Derrick Rose, for instance. But, I mean, looking down the odds board, I mean, Anthony Davis, 30-1. I think, like, Zion Williamson could win an MVP, but there are better ways to bet that. You're better off betting Pelicans division, Willie Green, coach of the year, Pelicans 1 seed, that type of stuff. So there's not too many appealing long shots. Anyone you think who can shock the world?
Yeah, I think there's 2 guys. And they're both on teams that I rate as good regular season teams, and certainly if somebody shocks and comes out and wins the Eastern Conference, with 1 seed in the East, for instance, something like the Cleveland Cavaliers, maybe it's because Evan Mobley has taken a huge step forward. I like him better as a defensive player of the year candidate, but he's going to have if that team makes a step forward, it's not going to be entirely because of Donovan Mitchell this year. It's going to be his progression as a player. And I think that's a nice little 1-2 punch to have at the top of your team. And so I can see a case for Evan Mobley materializing. Similarly, same mold, same kind of general thesis. Jaren Jackson Jr. for the Memphis Grizzlies is kind of interesting to me just because, again, like great defensive player of the year candidate. You could see yourself kind of getting caught up in the middle of the NBA information, or content cycle in like January, February, be like, can you believe Jaren Jackson Jr. leads in every single statistical category? Like, there could be that conversation could be happening. It would be it probably assists is a long shot, but he could be leading in everything else. And he's the type of high ceiling player that I wouldn't hate taking a huge price on. But no, the highest plus EV, the biggest, largest plus EV bet to be made in that market is Jokic 4-1. That should be like plus 150.
Yeah, I think it should be a lot closer to that than 4-1, certainly. Yeah, I think Mobley is an interesting one for most improved player, given that he just, I think he averaged 16 points a game last season, so he's got a lot of scope. And I think that, yes, he came third in Defensive Player of the Year. He's kind of established, but he's never been an all-star. He's not quite, I think, entrenched enough to not win that award. So I think if he's someone who averaged 23 and 10, and it's clear, right, Evan Mobley is now the best player on the Cavs, and they're a 2 seed, and all that happens. And I think Mobley is certainly a player who can win. He's a little bit, I think we're a little bit shaded by the fact that Morant won 2 years ago, and then Shea came second this year. That normally that's not the type of player who is in the mix. Normally it's someone like, Goran Dragic or Jimmy Butler goes from averaging 13 games to a star, or Paul George, and who was, not a star very much before he won that award, Victor Oladipo. So normally it's that type of player who leaps from, 14 a game into the, all-star mix. But I think Mobley, if a few things break right, certainly he could win. But I mean, if your man and your bet from last season, Tyrese Maxey, I think if Harden isn't on the team, then Maxey has to be the favorite in that market, I think.
Where do you think Harden ends up? I have no read on this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange one. I don't think you want to. He's the one guy in the league you don't want to do the Ben Simmons thing of just letting him show up and just dogging it, because he showed what he wanted, what he could do in Houston and then also in Brooklyn as well. So I think it's probably a slight dog that he starts the season on the team, and I guess the Clippers are the team that makes most sense. But I don't know what you're taking back if you're Philadelphia, because you can't really waste a year of Joel Embiid's prime. So certainly that is a weird one. Let's talk about NBA Rookie of the Year. Victor Wembanyama is minus 135. I think if you hunt around, you can find some minus 120 or so. Chet Holmgren, after some highlight reel performances in Summer League, is plus 350. Scoot Henderson plus 450. Brandon Miller 13-1. What do you think of this market?
Yeah, really, really tough read, because the price free fall for Wemby, I think, is correct on the assumption that the Spurs are telling you that they may take it easy on him. He may not get as much court time this year as you would assume, and in doing so, that may open the door for someone who's getting a little bit more usage, who's kind of a plug and play type of player. And I get why Holmgren and Henderson are the second and third choices in this market, but if I'm basically saying that Wemby's availability is going to be throttled by the Spurs to the degree that he shouldn't be the favorite in this market, I'm more interested in looking at a long shot like Brandon Miller in the 13-1 range. And, fourth choice being 13-1 is pretty appetizing on at face value. And then specifically his usage and his kind of plug and play next to LaMelo Ball is of interest to me in Charlotte. Charlotte's is a team that I don't think that there are enough established scorers that if Miller struggles over certain portions of the season, is he going to lose his starting job? No. So he's going to be he's kind of the likely candidate for just sort of cheap volume, which I think could be enough to win it this year. But it's weakly held opinion. What about you?
Yeah, I think people are probably overreacting a little bit to Miller not looking amazing, at least statistically, in Summer League with all the fouls and everything. I think if I was going to make two bets in this market, it would be Miller and then Wembanyama at minus 135 as well. There's also, I don't think that the 65-game rule applies to Rookie of the Year.
No, there's no rule. But the question is, do the Spurs throttle him to like 50?
Yeah, which will make it difficult. But you would think that if he's at Ja Morant won Most Improved Player at 56. If you're getting above that type of range for a Rookie of the Year as well, which tends to look forward. I know LaMelo missed a decent chunk of time the year he won. I want to say he plays 50, low 50s out of 72. So I think that that Wembanyama, so long as he gets to that kind of range, he should be okay. All right, last one before we close out. US Hard Court Tennis is here. What are you looking for?
This is
the lead-up tournaments or the US Open prices?
This is a fun time of the season. If you are, the type of person that is really looking for sports right now that is not baseball, then tennis is your answer, because these tournaments are going on every day between now and the U.S. Open, which is, of course, wraps right after Labor Day. Perfect handoff to NFL Week 1. So here we are in the home stretch of the tennis handicapping season. I know they continue to play after the U.S. Open, but that's football time. So we can put a bow on this at the U.S. Open here. The next 4 weeks are kind of the key run up to shaping some of the outright market for the U.S. Open. This week's tournament of interest is in Atlanta. It is all kind of up and coming U.S. players. There's a lot of guys on that entry list who have underwhelmed to this point in the season that I think would really, really like kind of an early title to help put them on track for a good showing at the U.S. Open. They need some points. They need some ranking points to get them out of harm's way in terms of seeding issues. There's no real star-studded Europeans in this field. Your 2 seed is Alex de Minaur. Your 3 seed is Dan Evans. These guys are very beatable on hard courts, and it's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. This is typically where John Isner used to just blast everyone off the court with his serve. I think he won something like 6 titles in a row or something absurd. And he's in the mix here. I definitely have the youngsters circled. I'd like to see what Eubanks does in terms of his back on American soil? Does he carry the confidence and the outstanding tennis we saw from him at Wimbledon into his home tournament? He is, of course, very famously a Georgia Tech Atlanta guy. And then, of course, on the top half of the draw, you got to circle Ben Shelton. This is a huge 2 months for him. Between now, this is it. This is huge for him. Like if he builds strong into the U.S. Open, these are the conditions. This is the kind of crowds. This is, he's going to be a household name, and he is kind of the highest ceiling guy we have in men's tennis in the United States. And so if he puts something special together, he's going to be, a very, very, he's going to shorten pretty aggressively between now and the U.S. Open is what I'm getting at. And I think he can win this tournament. He's the best player in this tournament outside of Taylor Fritz, who's gone through a very weird season so far. And so it's, this is kind of his to lose and, his opportunity to make a mark on these, because we go from Atlanta to DC to Canada to Cincinnati. Those 4 tournaments build in terms of prestige, build in terms of quality of opponents. And so it's important to kind of get a lot of court time, build yourself up in this stretch, and take a little bit of confidence into the U.S. Open, because certainly the Europeans tend to dominate the clay run up to the French Open. And this is sort of the opportunity for everyone else to shine on the run up to the U.S. Open. So need the Americans to really step up, and would like to see Shelton in particular perform well in the next month.
Yep, I think Ben Shelton 22-1 in Atlanta is a grand bet. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick. We'll be back soon.